Do you know that South Africa has 14 sign languages? Recently, in 2022, one sign language was approved to be the standard sign language for the country. Many deaf were ecstatic with the news, but some were not. That process of choosing one sign language to be the sign language of a country is called standardization. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on this, the pros and the cons of standardization. So, what does standardization mean? Let's read this quote first. Standardization may occur as a natural development of a language in a speech community or as an effort by members of the community to impose one dialect or variety as a standard. Richard Nordquist. I'm going to sign standardization like this because I think that sign matches the concept well. The language becomes the same while diverse signs are weeded out. Now, keep in mind that standardization happens for two reasons. One is called natural standardization, and that means it occurs naturally as language grows, it adapts and changes over time, usually over the course of years, and that's natural standardization. For example, if I sign tomato like this and you sign tomato as that, like red apple, we have different signs for this concept. But if more and more people use red apple, red apple, red apple, I'm probably going to change to adopt your sign. So your sign becomes the more common sign, the standard. Does that make sense? Formal standardization is when someone sets up through policy or order one sign language, which becomes the standard language for all, and that's formal standardization. So natural is from the bottom up, the people themselves change and adapt over time. Formal is when a leader or community makes the decision to standardize. The pros and cons of formal standardization. I'm now going to present 4 pros for formal standardization and 4 cons to formal standardization. Identity. One's label or identity. It's important to understand that in most countries, signers make up about 1% of the population or less. Some countries have 2% or even 3% because of war conditions, which results in more deafness. But most of the time it's around 1%, and that's it, which means that standardization can help a community become more unified, to help them work hand in hand under one shared linguistic identity. But if that small 1% is made up of many, many different sign languages, it's not cohesive enough to work hand in hand. So people who promote standardization warn that unity and camaraderie in the community is vital. So standardization can help us as a community, as a signing community, come together under one identity, which also means that outsiders will be more apt to recognize the community as a linguistic minority. Thus, standardization leads to recognition inside the community and outside the community, which is most certainly a pro for standardization. The cons are, well, if you choose one language, one sign language, to be the main language, what happens to the others? Well, they are disheartened. Those who know the standardized language feel elite or important. We have the right sign language. We are right, thus you have the wrong one. The minority sign languages feel less than. Our language must not be important, or my language is wrong. Clearly, I need to change my signs to match the standardized sign language. Also, parents feel increasing pressure, feeling like they can't teach their cultural heritage, linguistic heritage, because they have to prioritize their children learning the standardized language so they can succeed in life. So to reiterate, standardization means one language is chosen, usually to the exclusion of the others. The other languages are inferior, while the one sign language is elevated. Our language is right, your language is wrong. Communication. I'm sure you've seen these before. Interpretation for the White House, for the news, for natural disaster announcements. These are possible because of standardization. So definitely a pro to standardization is accessibility. And really the goal of standardization is all understand together. That's the goal. Recently, in a viral news story, the White House didn't want to provide an official ASL interpreter for news briefings. And that discussion has become very heated with the deaf community saying, we need an interpreter. And that discussion is heated. It's tough because it's hard enough to get one interpreter. Imagine if we had 14 sign languages. Which one do you pick for interpretation? Who becomes the official White House interpreter? There would just be too many sign languages to provide all, so it just won't happen. Standardization means that you might eventually get at least one interpretation for the news, for emergency preparations, for emergency announcements. So again, their goal is we all understand together. The cons are the following. That idea that we all understand together, that idea is a false assumption. It just can't happen. Typically, what results is the people who know the standard majority sign language understand everything. They have full accessibility, while the others who know the minority sign languages don't. They lack accessibility, they struggle to understand what is being signed, they miss information. So those who set up standardization assume now everyone understands. But if you know, say, Black ASL or one of the indigenous sign languages, you don't understand what is being signed. Law. Standardization is a plus for legal reasons. For example, it can help when it comes to establishing disability laws. It helps retain recognition as a language identity so they can set up accessibility options and services for that group, that one group. So it makes sense that disability law upholds standardization. It makes legal recognition possible. It can also help the community come together as one to fight for rights. It can also help to have one kind of interpreter, meaning you can have an ASL interpreter for everything. If an interpreter knows that standard language, that means ease for accessibility. It means interpreters can be provided for any event, any doctor's appointment, anything. That interpreter can show up and interpret it without the struggle of the client having different sign language needs. That is in theory. But on the con side, that idea of one kind of interpreter, that this one standard language can easily meet the needs of all clients, that idea is false. We already have this issue here in the US. We don't have 14 sign languages like South Africa. We still have many sign languages, yes, but not like South Africa. But we have many different kinds of interpreters required, like CDIs, protactile, oral translation, cued speech. Standardization here in the US hasn't fixed this quote unquote problem. Education. This is a big one, education. There are a lot of pros to standardization for education. People who agree with standardization say that education is impossible if every teacher knows a different sign language. And I'm talking different sign languages, not just different accents. Different languages entirely would be impossible. And they have a point. Suppose your school staff was made up of 14 different sign language users. Your students would somehow have to learn through 14 different sign languages. That would be impossible. Also, ASL student curriculum benefits from standardization. For example, ASL 101 or 102, proponents point out that there needs to be a standard ASL because how else would you test these students? How do you know who passed or failed if you don't have an established standard? Also, dictionaries. Typically, when countries approve a standard sign language, the first thing they do is publish a dictionary. And that can help people learn ASL, for example. It can help with education. Also, standardization benefits interpreter certification. When testing interpreters, how do you decide who passes and who fails without a standard? Standardization helps resolve that problem. Remember back when South Africa had the funeral for Nelson Mandela, and a fake interpreter stood up and quote unquote interpreted, really gestured awkwardly the entire time. I remember the whole world watching him and saying, what? How does something like this even happen? But you see, they didn't have interpretation certification or examinations at the time. They didn't have an interpreter standard, so they couldn't declare whether someone was certified or not. There was no standard at the time. Well, that event sparked South Africa's deaf rights revolution in March, which eventually that led to the standardization of SASL, South African Sign Language. So again, standardization can help resolve those types of problems. So there are pros for standardization for education. The cons are a little complicated. Like the dictionaries I mentioned, their foundation is a written language. For example, English. You look up a word in English, and then it gives you one sign as its translation. It implies that one word equals one sign, which is simply not the case. And it also means that if I sign tomato this way and you sign tomato that way, which gets put into the dictionary as the official standard sign for tomato from here on out? Which one? Another con is that the interpreter examinations become, well, bland, surface level. They become sterile because other diverse signs and sign languages are not included. So diverse signs can get weeded out. And interpreters become the same. Again, this seems great in theory, but remember that here in the United States, signers come with a variety of linguistic needs. One interpreter, one kind of interpreter is not going to match all these needs. And that's a problem to standardization. So if you as an interpreter know the standardized language, well, you'll pass the exam. But if you're absolutely fluent in a minority sign language, it doesn't matter really, you'll fail because you know the wrong language. Now, I think some states have been trying to improve this, trying to adjust their tests to meet a greater set of needs. But for the most part, which sign language you know will determine whether you pass or fail. From what I observe, as I look at the pros and cons, it seems that those who promote standardization, who encourage it, their focus is on recognition and on ease of application. Those who are against standardization, who are concerned about standardization, their focus is on linguistic diversity and true accessibility. Standardization is not new. The process of standardization is not a new phenomenon that's occurred only in recent years. No, it's happened throughout all of time, throughout all of history, again and again. Anytime one group has conquered another land, their language has become the new lingua franca. Inevitably, it happens again and again. The power dynamics between languages skew in favor of the conquering language, the ruling language. For example, this occurred between English and Welsh. The power dynamics did not favor Welsh, which almost completely disappeared. It was an endangered language as a result and almost became a dead language. But thankfully, in recent years, they've tried to teach Welsh in schools again. And honestly, that's vital. I think education is where standardization is typically enacted. For example, around the middle of the 1800s was when English became more and more standardized. Why? Well, school teachers needed to teach their students how to write and spell in English. And over time, English became more and more standardized so that nowadays English is very strict. If you're writing English, there's a right way and a wrong way. There is a correct way to spell and a wrong way to spell a word, and there's no in between anymore. So English is quite strict that way now. But does that occur only with hearing written languages? Not at all. It has happened with sign languages too. For example, when the American School for the Deaf was established, what did they do? Well, when deaf Native American children showed up signing their sign languages, like PISL, Plains Indian Sign Language, and many others, they were immediately taught French Sign Language. As they were taught in French Sign Language, they thought that their sign language was wrong and set those signs aside. Also, when deaf students from Martha's Vineyard arrived, they were taught to sign French Sign Language only, as that was the correct sign language. Though some researchers say that modern ASL has some French Sign Language signs, some Martha's Vineyard Sign Language, and some PISL, and that's what makes up ASL today. But still, French Sign Language for a time was the right language and the others were wrong, and thus used less and less. And now Martha's Vineyard Sign Language has gone completely extinct. And that occurrence happened again when deaf white schools and black deaf schools, which had been segregated, were desegregated, which meant that, can you guess? White ASL was prioritized. Many black deaf teachers were fired, and white teachers taught their ASL. So the power dynamics shifted with white ASL taught rather than black ASL, and that continues still today. Another example of standardization in education was when a good man named Andrew Foster, noticed that there were no deaf schools in Africa and thus no education for deaf children. So he went to Africa and he set up many schools that taught in what sign language? Well, not the local languages. They taught ASL in a way. Really, it was very strong signed English, and that still continues to be taught to this day. Again, this was good for education reasons, very good, but the local sign languages disappeared right and left. And we see this again and again in the cases of deaf villages. Their local sign language will flourish and grow until a deaf school is established in the village, and then that number of users will shrink quickly. And then usually the local sign language will disappear completely. And this happens again and again. So we're kind of stuck. Is standardization a good thing or a bad thing? It's hard to know in this situation. My experience with language power dynamics. My last example today is from my own experience. I had traveled to the African continent, to a specific country, though I'd rather not say which. But when I arrived in the country, we made our way to a kind of isolated deaf school. And when I came, I noticed the teachers were all hearing, but no one signed. So I show up with my group of friends, and we just have a blast chatting with the children. They were just such cute kids. Anyway, as we're chatting, the children are signing, and they're using their local sign languages or their home sign or their made-up signs, which was just so cool to observe. And we were just loving learning their signs for different concepts. But I remember standing there, and I was watching my friend, who was an adult, right? So she was an adult signing with a kid, and he saw a sign that she used. And the sign that he had been using up to this point, his local sign, he immediately abandoned it for his new ASL sign. And he used that ASL sign from then on out. I'm watching the dynamics between this adult and child, and when I see this, I'm immediately sick to my stomach. His sign was tossed out in a heartbeat. As soon as I realized what was happening, I wanted to shout, "Stop signing! Everyone, just stop signing!" I was heartsick. This experience helped me decide to build InterSign University. I want to find teachers for every sign language, including every local dialect. Who decides? Today, I've attempted to present both the pros and cons for standardization in a fair way. But please understand that I myself am quite opposed to standardization, not for every situation, but certainly for most. This is because I thoroughly enjoyed language diversity, and I want to do my best to help preserve these sign languages for future generations. I don't want to see these languages die off, so there's only a few national standardized sign languages left. My problem with standardization is the question, who decides? Who decides which sign language should be the standard sign language? Who? Who decides which sign language should lead in education, in law, in communications, in identity? Who decides that? Well, typically, those who decide are the people who are in power, which means that most of the time, hearing people are making the decisions. They think, oh, it's just so much easier for accessibility, so let's standardize one sign language. Or they think, it's just confusing that there's so many sign languages. It would be so much better if there was one sign language, not recognizing that there are thousands of spoken sign languages around the world. So they think, why do we have so many sign languages? Again, who decides? And even if deaf people are in the decision, typically they are the ones who know the majority sign language, right? And they want to see their sign language widespread. It's only natural. They assume my sign language is the correct one. CEU course. As you can tell, I feel very strongly about this topic, which is why I've been building for some time now a CEU course for interpreters so they can learn more about standardization and how they can support minority sign languages. If you're interested and you want to take this course, please let me know in the comments below. I've been building it for some time now, but I haven't published it yet. So I thought this video and your comments could help me decide if I should go ahead and make it available for CEU credit. Please remember to subscribe and like. And if you're interested in learning more about PISL, Plains Indian Sign Language, I recommend this video here.